In chapter 5, isn't it? And we have discussed till chapter verse 23. So we'll continue from there today. Okay, so let's chant the prayers. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimade Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyata Desatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So welcome you all once again. Yeah. So we have been discussing chapter 5, which is entitled as Krishna Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness. So in last week we have discussed till 23rd verse. Just let's recap a bit on two more verses where we discussed. So in text 22 we have discussed about who is intelligent person. They do not partake or they enjoy this material senses, and this says na teshu ramate buddha. So Prabhupada says, in translation it says that so wise men, they do not delight in them. In them means what? In the pleasure they get through the contact of material senses. So those who are wise, and why? Because they understand that these material senses are actually the source of misery. So the source of misery, where we are getting this misery in this material world, actually the source is this material pleasure, or which comes due to the contact with this material senses. Hence, those who are wise people, they do not partake in this enjoyment. And hence, why? Another reason was given, that because it is such pleasures have a beginning and an end. Antavata, Adi Antavata. It has a beginning as well as end. However, this spiritual pleasure, it is unlimited and ongoing. It never ends, right? Hence, what happens next? In 33rd verse, we discussed about that how can we do this? This material world is very difficult, because every now and then we see so many things, and we are actually attracted towards those enjoyment. But 23rd verse, Krishna says that we have to tolerate the urges. If one is able to tolerate the urges, see, if in the previous verse it says that the wise persons, they do not enjoy this material happiness, and in the second, this 23rd verse, it says that one has to tolerate these urges. And what happens if one tolerates? He is well situated and happy in this world, right? So that's all we discussed, that if one wants to make a steady progress in the path of self-realization, he must try to control the forces of the material senses. So when and there we discuss about other forces, like force of talk, anger, mind, stomach, and tongue. These urges should be controlled. So basically, when we control our urges, what we get? We get actually happy in this world. So just to be a small example, we can take it like, let's suppose someone is diabetic, and the doctor says you should not take sugar, you should not take sweets. So as a person, he is not supposed to take sweets, but as soon as he sees some sweets, his tongue says, let me have it. So just to satisfy his tongue, as it says in previous verse, what he says, that this such pleasure has some beginning and an end. So as soon as he tastes this sweets, what happens? So that might, at the time, he may say, okay, wow, it's very delicious. But what happens next? His sugar level increases, isn't it? And he may be put in a dangerous situation. So that's why controlling, that's a weird example, but the controlling the senses, controlling the urges of the senses, we can be situated in a well, happily in this world, right? So till that we have discussed on our last session, and I will continue from 24th. Okay. Hare Krishna, Mukesh Prabhu. Welcome back. Yes, so let's see 24th and we'll continue from there.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. So text 24, it says, Yo antar sukha antar arama tathantar jyotir eva yaha sayogi brahma nirvanam brahma bhutadi gacchati. So this verse says about those person who can tolerate the urges, right? What they can actually, and it says brahma bhutadi gacchati. This person, these three lines talks about the personality or the quality of persons who get brahma bhutadi gacchati, who attains what? They attain self-realized, or they ultimately attain the supreme. What are the qualities? Anta sukho, he is, the person is actually happy within. And antar atmaras, who enjoy within. And then tathantar jyotir evaya, so who actually he try to get pleasure within himself. That person is how? Sayogi. He is brahma nirvana, he is completely liberated, and he can actually attain the supreme. So translation says, one who is happiness is within. So it means what? If we are looking happiness, so understand that in the previous 22nd verse we understood that the happiness what we seek in outer world, that actually becomes the cause of our misery. And the one who seeks happiness within himself, the one who is happy within himself, who is active and rejoice within, and whose aim is inward, is actually perfect mystic. And what? He is liberated in the supreme, and ultimately he attains the supreme. It means what? So the person who feel happiness within, how can we do that? Who is residing within us? Paramatma. Krishna is there as Paramatma within us. So when we try to find our own self, who am I? This soul, this not this external body. We are actually soul, and we are part and parcel of Lord Sri Krishna. And then we can try to enjoy within. Then when we get pleasure within by realizing, by meditating on Lord, by chanting his holy name, then we attain the supreme. Right? Prabhupada very nicely says that unless one is able to release happiness from within, how can one retire from external engagement meant for deriving superficial happiness? So the outer happiness, what we see, these are actually superficial happiness. It has a starting, it has an end, it finishes. That, and we may have to work so much hard to get those things. Sometimes we do not get, and we get frustrated as well. So unless and until we get something within our own self, there is no question of getting away from the outer happiness. So it means what? Again, I remember this book, A Higher Test. So unless and until you get higher test, you cannot give up the lower test, isn't it? So let's, for example, we have to discuss many a time in maybe your history of listening songs. So you can have this Bollywood or Hollywood song. So as soon as you get new songs, you get something different. As soon as you get something different, you give up the older one which you are listening very nicely, right? And you start listening the new one. So you get something higher. That's a material example. However, we give up the older one. In the similar way, when we start releasing within ourselves, understanding who am I, who Krishna is, and engaging ourselves in devotional services, then it becomes very easy to give up the external engagement, which are actually meant for superficial happiness. Otherwise, it becomes very, very difficult. And then Prabhupada says nicely this line, a liberated person enjoy happiness by factual experience. What that does mean? So what is factual experience? That the fact is we are not this body. We are the soul, and we are part of super soul. So if you want to enjoy, then we should find happiness within. What is the fact? Fact is that we are not from this world. We are actually from this spiritual world. Somehow or other, we have fallen in this place, but we need to go out. Like, let's just, for example, in a prison, a person, he is in prison, he doesn't find himself very good in prison. He wants to go out and meet his family members well. So the prison is not his place. isn't it? He wants to come out somehow or other, because he has done some crime. He is now put in the prison. In the similar way, we are actually a part, or we belong to spiritual world, but somehow or other we came in this world and start thinking that this world is actually the fact, but that's not the fact, isn't it? We are actually belong to spiritual world. Hence, Prabhupada says, a liberated person, the person who is Brahma, who is enjoy within and who finds happiness in the factual experience, by it means that we are not this body, we are soul, and we belong to some other world. We belong to the spiritual world, which is always eternal. We are living in this world. This is temporary, right? And then he can thereby sit silently at a place and enjoy the activities of life from within. And such a liberated person no longer desire material happiness, and this state is called as Brahma Bhuta, the one who is actually self-satisfied within himself. And I know it seems to be very difficult in this material world. Yes, verse 24th and 25th are actually very difficult state, but again Krishna explains going forward ahead over there. And hence, when we have in this state Brahma Bhuta states, the one is assured to go back to Godhead, back to home. So be in this world and being in this state of Brahma Bhuta, completely satisfied, completely equipoised, completely, basically we are more ahead of this material senses, material enjoyment. We come in the platform of Brahma Bhuta, and that gives us a path to go to back to Godhead, to where? To our factual planet, to the spiritual world, back to Godhead, back to home, right? And let's see 25th. The 24th and 25th are more of related to each other, and here Krishna is saying that how can see from chapter 2, 3, and 4, and even 5, Krishna is always trying to say Arjuna that be equipoised, like be neutral. Don't think of happiness and distress. Be on the platform of equipoise, right? So sama sukha dukha. So be equal in distress, happiness, honor, dishonor, right? In a similar way, now again Krishna says same thing in a different way. He says in 25th, labante brahma nirvana rishya sheni kalmasha shena dvidha itatmana sarva bhuta hiterata. Those who are beyond the dualities that arise from doubts, whose minds are engaged within, and who are always busy working for the welfare of all living beings, and who are free from all sins, they achieve liberation in the Supreme. So they actually go back to Godhead. They get, what are those? Again, being equipoised. They are beyond dualities, right? This metal world, this illusion, they're actually this, and they always engage their minds within. They search within themselves, who am I, and they try to find the relationship between themselves and Supreme Soul, and the who are always busy working with the welfare of all living beings. Prabhupada mentions this very nicely, that what is the best welfare for all living beings? What is the best? And Prabhupada says in the purport that only a person who is fully in Krishna consciousness can be said to be engaged in welfare work of all living entities. So anyone who is in Krishna consciousness, who understands the position of Krishna, who understands the position of self, he can only be engaged in the welfare of work for all living entities, because he actually guides us towards eternity. He doesn't say, okay, just earn and enjoy. No, it's a misery. So he guides us toward the eternity. And when a person is actually in the knowledge that Krishna is the fountain of everything, then when he acts in the spirit, he acts for everyone. Just imagine, we take an example many times, the same Prabhupada, right? Prabhupada was actually, if you see, in his old age, in his 70s, he was in Vrindavan, Radha Damodar temple, right? And if we take the other way around, if he could have lived his life over there very nicely, he was doing bhajana, he was in the Vrindavan, he was chanting the holy name, completely satisfied, equipped, but he took a extra effort to come to this Western world at the age of 70s and 80s, right? And then spread the message of Krishna consciousness, which actually he engages himself in the welfare work for all living entities. So because of him, we have so many people, engaged in Krishna consciousness, sharing the Krishna consciousness, and actually living the life of Krishna consciousness. And hence, Krishna says that these persons, they are already going back to Godhead, right? In this way, by spreading the message of Krishna consciousness, by being in fully in Krishna consciousness, we can engage ourselves in the welfare work for all living entities. See, I think the example was already given earlier as well. Prabhupada says that let's, for example, a child has somehow other, he missed his parents in a mela, right? And then if someone comes and says, okay, this is a child and he's hungry, he gives him some food. But again, the child gets food, that's fine. But again, after 3 hours, he's still again hungry. And the next person comes and says, okay, this child, he is alone, and he gives some more food, and he gives some maybe clothes and some blankets for him to be in the night. However, the third person who comes up and he says, okay, I know your parents, let me take you to your parents. And as to the third person take the child to his parents, he is completely there. He can get food there, he can get shelter, he can get blanket, everything all there. He's actually free from all his worries, isn't it? In a similar way, we are in this material world, are actually trying to get some blanket from someone, food from someone. But if someone comes and guide us towards eternity, so that we can go back to Godhead, which is eternal, always blissful, then is actually the best thing, isn't it? So that's basically Prabhupada makes more emphasis on this word, where it says engaging ourselves in the welfare of all living beings, right? And then Prabhupada mentions also that in this last para, they says a person engaged only in ministering to the physical welfare of human society cannot factually help anyone. Right? I think we can actually very, very clearly, you can see these things in this today's world, right? So even other things. So temporary relief of the external body and the mind is not satisfactory. We can be relieved for some time, but what next? We'll be struggling again. We might get some bread and butter today, but what's tomorrow? And what's after this? In this body, maybe we are well seated in this body, but what's coming in the next body? So as soon as we give up this body, we get another body. So what next? So why to be in this world of birth, old age, and disease? Rather, let's go back to where there is no old age, there is no disease, there's no birth, there is no death, there is spiritual world, right? So that's the actually ultimate goal should be of anyone and everyone in this material world, to go to the spiritual world, right? And let's see next 26. So 24th and 25 was quite maybe difficult for common people. And yes, it's being says that let's see the 26th one, what Krishna says. Even it's actually 26 also comes with the same one, that how can someone be assured of liberation? So kama krodha vimuktatmanam yati nam yata chetasam abhito brahma nirvana vartate viditatmanam. So those who are free from anger and all material desires, who are self-satisfied, self-disciplined, and constantly endeavoring for perfection, are assured for liberation in the Supreme in very near future. So if you see the same things coming again, right? One who is self-realized, who is seeking within who understand who is what self-realization. Prabhupada nicely, very clearly says what self-realization. It means that understanding who am I, first thing, and understanding who is God, the second thing, and third thing is understanding the relationship between myself and the God. So who am I? I am not this body, I am this spirit soul. And who is God? Krishna is the supreme personality of God, he is God. And what relationship I do have? There is a loving devotional relationship between each other. That is basically self-realization. And the person is self-disciplined and constantly endeavoring for perfection. What is perfection? To be completely the servant of Krishna, right? To be his dasa, to be his engage oneself in the service of Lord is the perfection, and then we actually are sure to be liberated. So if you know, actually, if you see, we will discuss those things in chapter 6 or 7 onwards, where we'll see that the devotee, they actually do not seek liberation as well, right? What they want is the only service of Lord Krishna. But as we are discussing about karma yoga, so Krishna is talking about more of getting away from this metal plane and towards liberation. But Krishna will say again, the devotees, they are actually engaged in more of his services towards Lord Sri Krishna rather than seeking for liberations, right? And Prabhupada quotes a very nice verse from Bhagavatam, is very, very beautiful, that how can someone be assured of liberation, and how can someone, basically this one's, how can someone is free from material desires and who is self-realized? How can someone be? Let's see, it says, it's from Bhagavatam 4:22 and 39. It's a very nice verse as well. Yada pada pankaja palasha vilasha bhaktya. So it says, just try to worship in devotional service Vasudeva, the supreme personality of Godhead. See, controlling our senses, being self-realized, being poised, that's, it might be very difficult. But by worshiping Lord Krishna in devotional service, it becomes very easy. Otherwise, let's see what it says. The verse says, even the great sages are not able to control the forces of senses as effectively as those who are engaged in transcendental bliss by serving the lotus feet of the Lord, uprooting the deep grown desire for fruitful activities. So giving up attachment to this metal world, to fruitful results for sense enjoyment, it's not so easy. And even it's not easy as well. However, that this verse says, even the great sages, they fail to control the senses. If we earlier before we says that we need to tolerate, we need to control the urges of the senses. But here in Bhagavatam, it's being said that it becomes very difficult even for the great sages to control. However, they cannot control as effectively as those who engage themselves in devotional service towards the feet of Lord Hari. So by that, it becomes very easy for them to approve the deep grown desire for fruitful activities. So this desire for enjoying this material world or sense gratification is actually very, very deep. It's like, banyan tree. So it looks to be going up, but the branches goes down and it becomes more deeper and deeper and deeper, right? That becomes more difficult to give up this sense enjoyment. Very nicely we discussed earlier, like suppose if someone is walking, and if he sees a person in a bike, he thinks, okay, if I could have bike, then it would have been better for me. The person in bike thinks of car. The person in car thinks of very opulent car. The person in opulent car thinks of own flights and other things, right? So the desire actually goes on and on and on and on, this material desires. However, these material desires can be approved very easily. How? When someone is engaged in transcendental bliss by serving the lotus feet of Lord. So by engaging ourselves, sevar mukhe jivado. So by engaging our senses, right? By engaging our senses, by eyes we can use to see the Lord, tongues we can use to chant the holy name, even honor prasadam, right? And do kirtan, and ears can be used for hearing Krishna Katha, and the hands can be used for cleaning temples, worshipping the Lord, and legs can be used for traveling towards Dharma. In that way, when we engage ourselves, our all the senses in the service of Lord, then these material desires will be uprooted automatically. Otherwise, it becomes very difficult to do it. Right? That's why it says, just try to worship Lord in devotional service. Right? So worshipping Krishna in devotional service, it becomes very much easy for us to control this material pangs. Right? And as of now, till there's one more thing coming in this part in the paragraph. Prabhupada says that how a devotional service is actually by just devotional service we can actually attain spiritual world. The Prabhupada gives another example here. He says that by vision, by meditation, and by touch, only do the fish, the tortoise, and the birds maintain their offspring. Similarly, do I also, O Padmaja. This actually Krishna says to Lord Brahma. He says, the fish, what he does, the fish brings up his offspring simply by looking at them. So maybe, at our home, we do a different way to take care of our kids. But the fish, they brings their offspring simply by looking at them. Right? Just by saying they make them grow. And the tortoise is amazing. This is amazing, isn't it? The tortoise brings his offspring simply by meditation. So what tortoise does is, tortoise actually, he lays down his egg on the land, and then he go back to the water, and from there he meditates. And the tortoise meditates, and actually he takes care of his offspring. And that's why it says the eggs of the tortoise are laid on the land, and the tortoise meditates on the eggs while in the water. Similarly, in a similar way, the devotees in Krishna consciousness, although far away from the Lord's abode, they can elevate himself to that abode simply by thinking of him constantly. That is by engaging in Krishna consciousness. Right? So just by thinking about Krishna, hearing about Krishna, listening about Krishna, speaking about Krishna, chanting his holy name, one can actually go elevate himself to the abode of Lord. Right? So as of now, Krishna actually talked more about Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga. So in chapter 4, he says about Karma Yoga, transcendental knowledge. He gives us the knowledge as well. And here he says, Arjuna's you should engage yourself in your prescribed duties. At the same time, you should have proper knowledge of working. So working with proper knowledge, it actually elevates us. And working without knowledge, it degrades us. So very easily we can understand that, okay, if I'm doing these things and I have knowledge, then I know why I'm doing properly, and I will do it properly as well. If I don't have knowledge, then actually just I'm doing it, there is no much senses. And in this last two verses, this 27th and 20th verse, Krishna is going to explain that how can someone meditate, or how can someone get elevated toward this by Ashtanga Yoga, or by meditation. So as of now, Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga were discussed. And in these two verses, Krishna gives a bit of information about Dhyana Yoga, or you can say Ashtanga Yoga. But in chapter 6, it's completely elaborate these two verses over there. Right? Let's see it. Sparshan krutva bahirбхамас chakshuschaivantara bruhu pranapanau samo krutva nasabhyantacharino yatendriya manobuddhir munir moksha parayana vigata vigattecha bhaya krodhaya sada mukta evasha. So setting out all external sense objects, keeping the eyes and the vision concentrated between the two eyebrows, suspending the inward and outward breath within the nostrils, and thus controlling the mind, senses, and intelligence, the transcendentalist, aiming at liberation, becomes free from desire, fear, and anger. The one who is always in that state is certainly liberated. So this is basically characteristics of yogis where they try to close all the senses. They when they sometimes went to Himalayas and they meditated over there, and they close all the senses. They control the breathing process. They concentrate with the eyes to this nostril, and hence they certainly they come to this platform of liberation. Right. We'll discuss these points more detail in chapter 6. Even there are so many phases of Ashtanga yoga, like yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, samadhi. These are different 8 stages of yoga. That's why this is called Ashtanga yoga, having 8 limbs of this yoga. Right. And purpose is that in the 6th chapter, the subject of yoga is explicitly detailed. So we'll discuss this over there. However, this 29th verse is actually very important verse. Yeah, we have time to discuss it. So this is very important verse, and where Krishna is going to say what to understand and what to know. Right. Here it says, Bhoktaram yagatapasham sarvaloka maheshwaram shrudam sarvabhutanam yatva mam shantim rachyati. So let's go and see Gyatva Mam Santim Rachyati. So Gyatva means knowing, Mam means Krishna. What will attain? We'll get Santim, means we get Santi, we get relief from all material pangs. Right. So knowing Krishna in that way, in what way? By these 3 things. So by understanding Krishna in that way, so by knowing Krishna, what we get? We get Santi, we get relief from all material pangs. What are those? Knowing, understanding that Bhoktaram Yagatapasham. So what? The Krishna is the beneficiary of all the sacrifices. Bhoktaram Yagatapasham. So all the penances we do, all the austerity we do, all the sacrifice we do, who is the benefactor of that? Mama, Krishna. Krishna is the benefactor of that. So if you remember, we have discussed earlier about many types of sacrifices, like the brahmacharis, the grihasthas, right? They do sacrifice their senses, they study theirs, and in this way. And even not just sacrifice doesn't only mean that we do some fire sacrifice and put some ovulation over there. Any kind of sacrifice, doing austerity, doing penances, these are also comes in sacrifice. And everything, who is the beneficiary? Krishna himself. And then Krishna says Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. So who is Krishna? Is actually Sarvaloka Maheshwara. He is the supreme lord of all the planets and all the devatas as well. So he's Sarvaloka Maheshwara. Right. So those 2 things, that Krishna is the beneficiary of all the yagyas, penances and austerities, and Krishna is the master of all the planets and the devatas. So Ishvara, this word, let's say Maheshwara. Ishvara means what? Controller. So we are also controller, and everyone is somehow or other a little bit controller. But Krishna is the supreme controller. So he controls everything. So this planet is being controlled, if you see, by so many, Lord Brahma, Lord Indra, and others. They control it. However, even the planet is being controlled by Krishna. Not only just one, even many millions and millions of planets are being controlled by Krishna. Hence he says, Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. Krishna is the supreme lord of all planets. And the 3rd one, it says, Sridham Sarvabhutanam. Very important verse line, isn't it? What it is? Sridham Sarvabhutanam. He is the well-wisher of all living entity. So the 4th one says, Gyatva Mam, knowing me in that way, the devotees who know me in that way, they always be relieved from the pangs of these material miseries. Right, they are always relieved. What it is? Let's repeat. Bhoktara Megatapasham, understanding Krishna is the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and penances. He is the Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. He is the supreme lord of all planets and devatas. And Sudam Sarvabhutanam, he is the most or best well-wisher of all living entity. By understanding these 3 things, we can always be in we can be in peace. So Prabhupada actually he says this verse as peace formula. So we all are trying to be happy, be towards peace, but we do not know the formula of peace. And this verse gives us the formula of peace. Understanding that Krishna is the benefactor, Krishna is the proprietor, Krishna is the well-wisher of everyone. When we understand this, then we actually become peace. So he says, translation says, a person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries. Right. See, Prabhupada says in the purport, the conditioned souls within the clutches of this illusory energy are all anxious to attain peace in this material world, isn't it? Everyone is trying to be peace. However, but they do not know the peace, they do not know the formula for peace. We explained in this part of Bhagavad Gita. The greatest peace formula is simply this: Lord Krishna is the beneficiary of all human activities, and man should offer everything to the transcendental service of the Lord because he is the proprietor of all planets and demigods thereon. No one is greater than him, or no one is greater than he. He is the greatest than the greatest of the demigods, Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma. In the Vedas, Sutasaro Upanishad 6.7, it says the Supreme Lord is described as Tam Ishwaram Paramam Maheshwaram. Under the spell of illusion, living entity are trying to be lords of all they survey, but actually they are dominated by the material energy of the Lord. Right. So understanding this, that Krishna is the beneficiary of all sacrifices, penances, austerities. Krishna is the supreme lord of all planets and the devatas, and Krishna is the well-wisher of all living entities. We can actually attain peace. Right. So that's a nice purport being given by Prabhupada as well. That all things, even if you see in the Bhagavatam also, you can say that all the things what we do, either karma yoga or jnana yoga, dhyana yoga, anything that needs to be directed towards Krishna. So by understanding Krishna's position, by understanding our positions, we can actually be in peace. Right. So Prabhupada says this fifth chapter is a practical explanation of Krishna consciousness, generally known as karma yoga. And the question of mental speculation of how karma yoga can give liberation is answered in this chapter. So in this chapter also we have discussed earlier about this karma, akarma, vikarma, and this knowledge is when we are in this knowledge, when we act accordingly, we can actually liberate ourselves. Right, we can be in the position of liberation. Right, and Prabhupada says that Krishna consciousness is bhakti yoga, and jnana yoga is the path of leading to bhakti yoga. Right. So that's how this chapter is concluded by chapter 5. And anyone have any questions or thoughts or want to share something, we can please let me know.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much for your wonderful session. This is the first time I attended, and it was very, very nice, where we go line by line. I just have one question. Is so when we we are in this material world, there's always some sort of even though if we don't have material desires, maybe our family members or someone might have desires which can affect us also. If we say no or yes, it can directly affect us or a relationship. How do you handle such a situation? Do we also do we force them to get, not everybody will be in the same status as us if towards Krishna, right? How do we handle such a situation? How do we say, okay, this is you need to come about the material desire? Sorry, we are slightly new in Krishna consciousness, so it might be a very basic question, but yeah.
No, that's a very good question actually. So as discussed earlier, we are in this metal world, and definitely we'll have those things, because we can't go out of this, right? So we are here, and we'll definitely will have. So yes, as you said, maybe we can understand things, but maybe our relatives or parents or some things might not be able to understand on this point. But the scripture says, even Krishna is saying that we don't have to go out of it, just we need to divert things, and it happens gradually. It's not just one night things, okay, I'll give up everything. It's not possible. And in one of the verses we are discussing from chapter Bhagavatam, chapter canto 4, where it says, when we start engaging ourselves, our activities toward Krishna, the things becomes easier. So the two
Okay.
things is there. Once we get the higher taste, then the lower taste it becomes very easy to give up, right? So as being in this metal world, we can't say someone that, okay, you just need to give it up, it's all bogus, everything is all faltu, right? It's not that way. We just need to understand gradually that yes, whatever we are getting in material things are actually is temporary. So the desire which we have today to buy something, and when we get it, the desperation of the things becomes null. It actually becomes, okay, I've got it now, it has no more value, I need something more. So that getting more and more and more and more, gradually we understand that these are actually what, this useless at some point of time. Yes. So at the same time, it doesn't mean that we should say the other that, okay, just give it away. That doesn't work in that way. Gradually we come to the point where we understand that these things are actually not of much use, and we realize that the real essence of this metal body, what we have got, is actually to use to get the eternal things, to go back to the spiritual world. But as I said, it's a gradual process. It doesn't happen overnight.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thanks. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Okay, so we'll stop today here, and we'll continue on tomorrow. We'll continue our book reading, and on Friday we'll continue from chapter 6. Hare Krishna. Thanks for everything.